direction of travel, as it were. It starts off by dealing with the children and their mental image of what Gaza should be like, or could be like, or maybe even was like. So that's called Idul before the storm. And then we move through the attack, what it means, weaponry, and we move into what the exhibition's mainly concerned about, which is the trauma that the children suffer, and a kind of discussion about the widespread nature of that. In fact, the Palestinian Red Crescent spokesman said to me, and this is on the first board, this invasion isn't just about 400 people dead, or 400 children dead, 1,500 dead, and about 5,000 injured. He said it's about 1.5 million people being traumatised. Everybody in Gaza is traumatised, and we'll touch on that. And then obviously the third point is, what can we do about it? And my point is that there's nothing you can do about it. There's no medical treatment that's going to help these children. There's stuff that you can do to ameliorate and alleviate the problem, but there's nothing you can do to solve the problem except one thing, and that's to end the occupation. So resistance, as we come towards the end, is a very important part of the talk, okay? So that's an outline. And this old settlement is the route that the Israelis made their pincer movement into the southern suburbs, and that's Tal al-Hawa, and there's some panels on Tal al-Hawa, and we'll be talking about those. So I think that's dealt with that stuff. This is the first picture on the boards, and this is really just an introductory picture. Lots of images of barbed wire. It's what you'd expect. That's what Gaza is. That's what it means to the children in it. They're living inside barbed wire, and they helpfully show you something that they can't really do. I mean, they can move from the A to the Z, but they can't go beyond the wire, that's clear. People are interested in this word here, pormt, I guess, and that's because many of you, I guess, will know a little bit of Arabic. In Japanese and Chinese, we know that people have difficulties with W's and L's and confuse them together. Well, in Arabic, it's B's and P's. So this young child has thought very hard about the word bombed, and has thought, it sounds like a B, so it's probably a P. It's come to represent samud, which is a similar emotion, but means steadfastness, staying on the land and refusing to be pushed off your ideas, your principles, and your physical land. And it particularly comes to mean that from, is it Canada Park or Norway Park, near Jerusalem in Israel, which was funded by that country, and is on the site of 3 ethnically cleansed villages. And the Israelis actually dug up the foundations of all the houses and transported everything away, so there was no trace whatsoever of the village. But of course the cactus, which was also cut down and dug up, is very persistent. You can't get rid of it, and it comes back. And so there's a little film that you can find on the internet about this. Some Israeli NGOs, along with other people, actually just kept going back and tracing the cactus lines as they came up, because they're field boundaries. They were used, that's what they were used for. So you could trace the straight lines of the cactus, and you could work out where these 3 villages were, and the evidence for them, which was denied by the government. So it's got a lot of resonance, that with the invasion beginning. And of course they came in, I showed you where Beit Hanun was in the north, all the tanks come in that way, and this is how the children depict that. I mean, these helicopters and F-16s actually seem to be shooting the birds out of the sky, but it's interesting that they're shown shooting at trees rather than people. And here's a bulldozer. Israeli military formations are that tanks follow bulldozers. The bulldozers actually lead the attack because they clear all the vegetation out of the way, and the roads and so on. And there's our Sama here. Her grandfather owned 7 dunams, which is about 1 3/4 acres as opposed to 25 acres of the other man. And the same thing happened there. The bulldozers came and flattened everything. And she drew this picture of a tree, packed its bag, and it's running away. and the little child says, "Why is the tree running away?" And the mummy says, "Because she's afraid that she'll become firewood." But the Samaher story is more tragic than that, because they didn't live with their grandfather, they lived around the corner. The brother of Samaher was 11 or 12 when I met her. Her brother, a bit older, was sent, when the bulldozers were rampaging, and he was shot dead. She's so traumatised that she's become what I think is called voluntary mute. She does talk, but just odd words, and she won't respond to specific questions. And she goes to school. What's interesting is that when I went back to Gaza with the convoy, with Kieran, we were, a month and a half after Cass led, and all these kids whose family members had been killed were all back at school. Where else was there for them to go, Not allowed time to grieve, you just got to get on with your life. So Samaher, I talked to her, but I didn't, if you see what I mean. Here's a D9 bulldozer. You saw the picture of it. Many of you will know it anyway. Much bigger than the tanks. Kind of some relative correctness about that scale. There's it doing its job. This is all self-explanatory. This is Beit Hanun Mosque, which was F-16s, hit it 7 times. The trouble with reinforced concrete structures is the steel doesn't give way very easily, but of course the concrete shattered, it bends out of shape. So this is a completely unusable ruin that won't fall down, or might fall down. They don't have heavy equipment to demolish structures like this. Beit Hanun Mosque was bombed because they said it had, ammunition in the basement. Obviously, I don't know whether it did or not. But I've seen Beit Hanun Mosque, and it is. And so now, of course, kids go up with hammers and chip bits away to use as recycled building material, and that's the only way they're going to get demolished. Here's our D9 bulldozer again. Tanks, patches, F-16. The rest are drawn very well. The F-16's not so good. Here's our first bit of phosphorus. Here's a mosque, a different mosque. I think this is Tal al-Hawa, being hit. And whereas some mosques were actually directly attacked because the Israelis said they were ammunition stores, many mosques weren't. But every single minaret I saw had been hit by something, tank shell or something. Not necessarily demolished like this, but had been hit. Here's an ambulance set on fire. This says, if you're an Arabic speaker, you can probably give me this one, because I always get it wrong. Gaza under, is that a tank? Destruction. Okay. This is the light of Gaza. Here are some people with dismembered limbs. We'll come back to that. And here are a couple of rockets. And the reason I draw your attention to them is because one of the things about the art here is it's honest. This child doesn't know that if he was a politician, he wouldn't draw these. Okay? He's just drawing his experience, and we'll see that in other pictures. It's really important to me to get across to you that these are heart-drawn pictures. I mean, this is a very sophisticated picture by an older child, but even this is a reflection of the truth. These little children's pictures are just, this is a drone, this is a drone, this is a drone, here's a drone dropping a bomb, and phosphorus, and an F-16, and all the other stuff, and fighters, and a mosque, and so on. Drones you'll know about. They are pilotless planes, and pilotless planes, by definition, carry no risk at all to the pilot. One of the rules of engagement of war, if it isn't, should be, in my opinion, that you actually have to fight in it. You shouldn't be able to go to war from a safe distance. It seems to me that's a fundamentally immoral thing to do. There's no pilot in here who is risking even what the F-16 pilot is risking, which is virtually nothing at all. You can't hit the F-16 anyway. But you can't even begin to hit the pilot of this, because she probably will be a young girl, because the men are actually fighting in the field, is probably in a basement in Tel Aviv. And if the only way that you identify an enemy is the same way that I'm looking at this screen or that a kid looks at a computer game. Your predisposition not to shoot is so low. I mean, what can I say more? I think it's a war crime. How do the children in Gaza cope, and how does this come through in their pictures? Well, some are excited even by war against them. This child's fascinated by, look at the tension in that as it's demolishing that building. He's just recording a fact, but he's obviously, you know, he's captured, it's a young kid this, and these tightly coiled wires all neatly drawn, and what a beautiful helicopter. Nothing like a helicopter. I mean, it doesn't have an aerial that shape, but nice artistic thing. Some people go to a nice happy place to draw their pictures of war. I mean, Gaza City is full of tall buildings, and obviously this is meant to be Gaza City, though perhaps that's a minaret, looks a bit like Nelson's Column. But it doesn't look like Gaza City to me. It looks like Gotham City to me. And there's a kind of whole Batman feel about this, a kind of fantasy. The person shut themselves out of the war. These are all coping mechanisms by kids. Okay, so we come now to the real battle when they came round to the south. This is Tal al-Hawa. This is a road. Well, here's a little mosque. Here's a little building that's been attacked. Here's blocks have got damage in them. Somebody dropping phosphorus. And this big open space. These pictures, all the group of pictures on the board called Tal al-Hawa, were painted by kids who were moved. This battle went on for 3 days, or 3 or some days. It's the battle in which, not a battle, is it? It's an invasion, but this is the same situation in which tanks shelled Al-Quds Hospital with phosphorus and burnt it down. That went on for 3 days. This is all part of it. Tal al-Hawa, Al-Quds Hospital is in or on the edge of Tal al-Hawa. These kids drew these pictures in Islamic relief offices while it was going on. So they saw part of it, and then they were taken over there, and then they were given crayons to occupy themselves. So these pictures are kind of live-action paintings. And here's a photograph of that place. There's the building. There's the bits of problems. Here's the big open space on the left. Here's where the tanks have ripped up the road, and where because this used to be a dual carriageway, see? There's the pavement, which used to be black and white. There's the picture again for you. So you can see that that's quite accurate, really. So, again, I want to stress to you that these pictures do convey something. They're not just random images drawn from some kind of mental stock of images. And so when we're starting to look at decapitation and limb separation, we want to be asking ourselves whether that reflects something that the children have seen or not. And again, phosphorus. I mean, that's pretty dramatic, right? And here again, sorry, that was an accidental twitch, but it doesn't matter. People trapped in a building. It's all self-explanatory. This time in ambulances. But here, look. All this separation of limbs and heads. And it turns out that when I was there, I met some chaps from a French NGO who were actually exploring weapons that had been used in Gaza. And it turns out that this is the signature of a weapon called DIME, dense inert metal explosive. And DIME is tungsten in very small cubes, which travels so fast that it actually, just like a meteorite coming in from outer space, it burns itself up as it goes through. So unless there's a reason, there's no trace of this bomb after. It's in a plastic case so that there are no metal fragments to get in the way of the metal fragments inside, if you follow me. The plastic case burns up. They have a metal tip to either go through the roof of a car because it's a weapon used, it's an anti-personnel weapon. It's used for targeted assassinations. The range of the bomb's only about 20 metres or 30 metres or so. If you're standing in the centre of it, of course, you're going to die. But if you're standing at the periphery of it, then this is what it does. Because it hits you with such heat, it sears all the flesh and smashes the bone at the weakest point, which is the joint. And it's, well, we'll talk about it a bit more in a second. This is back to the theme of the veracity of the picture. This picture's just got everything in it. Being shelled from the sea, resistance fighter behind a building, tank attacking the building, unhappy sun, phosphorus, minaret being shot at, people hiding in the mosque, aid coming. That actually says UNICEF. You can see that, perhaps not there, but on the picture. Somebody injured, more resistance fighters on their way to do something somewhere, an ambulance. You know, this is a full catalogue. And here are people, hooded people, standing up against the wall, and one's been shot by 2 Israeli soldiers. You know, the resistance fighters are in. I think this is an accurate portrayal of things that happened there. And in Darfur, of course, they used children's pictures as part of the War Crimes Tribunal. Happily, we don't need to do that because there's enough evidence already been given to the UN. But I think this brings it home to you on a kind of much more human basis than just a text. Dense inert metal. You're not going to read all this. We'll quickly flick through it. In 2006, some Italian television reporters reported that the Israelis had a new weapon. The report was produced by the same journalists who claimed, it says here, without foundation, that the US used phosphorus in Fallujah. According to Haaretz, the weapon was launched from drones in the summer of 2006. So this is before Kasled. This is the important bit, I think. Physicians in the, led to abnormally serious physical injuries. Physicians in the Gaza Strip noted the pattern of wounds they were treating were unusual, with severed legs that showed signs of severe heat at the point of amputation, but no metal shrapnel, because it's all burnt up. The American version is still in a testing stage and had not been used on the battlefield at that time. It has not been declared an illegal weapon. There's obviously a hint here that it's going to be. And it's also claimed, without described basis, says this, highly carcinogenic. Certainly in Fallujah, they were described as carcinogenic. So who wrote this? Globalsecurity.com, an arms dealing website, a trusted source of military information, it says here. This is an ashtray in my hotel in Gaza. This is a 10 shekel piece, which is about a 20 pence or maybe a 10 pence piece here. So you can see how small these bits of dense inert metal are. Tiny, but about 10,000, 2,000 kilometres an hour they explode out of the bomb at. 2,000 kilometres an hour, which means that each one of these tiny fragments hits you with a force at the point of 1,000 tons. You can see how they're going to go through bone. At this point, I say to people very carefully, not that the Israelis have invented a weapon to kill children, but that if they had wanted to invent a weapon specifically to kill children, this is the weapon they would have invented. Because at the periphery of the radius, it depends on how thick your arms and legs are as to whether you're likely to keep them or not. And children have thinner legs and necks than adults do. So this is not a child-friendly weapon. This is his picture. He lived on the 6th floor of this big tall block of flats, which is a bit iconic in their particular area. Ibrahim wasn't, and neither was any of his family in this building at the time that it was hit. They were all outside, and so in Gaza terms, this is a non-story. Family out of the house at the time, have their house demolished and have to find somewhere else to live, is a non-story in Gaza. But the picture is again interesting because it shows F-16s and tanks and an ambulance. No Israeli soldiers, you notice. This theme of impunity, of not being present in a risk situation on the battlefield, again, these are all Palestinian fighters. Palestinian fighters, unarmoured, unweaponed except for guns. Israeli troops never seen, entirely hidden behind serious metal jackets, and the injured, or Palestinian, obviously. was in this mosque with his family when it got hit by, he's drawn an Apache, but I don't think he really knows what hit. They were told in this kind of very odd war where the enemy comes and talks to you by loudspeaker, they were told to leave the mosque and go home. So him and his family went home, and he's drawn his house here. They were told to stay indoors and not to come out under any circumstances, but after several hours his father decided to go out because they were hungry. His father went out and was killed. I mean, perhaps that represents his father, but on the other hand, perhaps it doesn't. I really don't know about that. So they stayed in the house. They really thought they'd better stay in the house. They didn't know their father was dead, but until he came back, they felt they shouldn't leave. And then this bulldozer came along and demolished the house on top of them. And many of you will know that Palestinians often live in multi-family units, so it might be a little block of flats in effect with different families in it. So all his uncles were killed as well. So he was the oldest of 5, or the oldest of 6. There were 5 others, and his mother were in the house. His father was killed outside, and all his uncles. So the only person living is his grandfather, whom he now lives with. I don't know what else you can say to that, really. I again noticed that these are very unrealistic drawings. They're less realistic than... This is more realistic. And here's some drones. I don't think he ever saw this machinery. I think this was all, they're just in the house. He didn't even see, I think, this is what it feels like. The fence at the back is permanently there. The tanks in all the open spaces, like that open space in Tal al-Hawa, planes overhead, boats in the sea. All you can do, well, is stay in your house, be bombed and die, really. Without having an outlet to express yourself and your self-worth, these are the kind of nightmares you have to live with. A psychologist told me when he saw this picture that the size of the flames relative to the figure are directly proportional to the amount of anxiety. It's a kind of graph. But actually it's a very good piece of art. You can see, can you, that person trapped there in the building, and again another stray leg. This is just a really angry picture from a little kid. She could paint the tree green, but she doesn't. She could paint herself a more realistic colour, but she prefers these angry shapes and colours. Especially this one. I asked this girl why she'd drawn this Israeli soldier standing on 12 dead bodies. She said, "You've missed the point entirely. These are live bodies. That's me. I'm one of those bodies and my friends. This is what we feel like every day. This is our daily life in my mind." Can you read the Arabic for us? Until when will this night of living death end? Something like that? Well, don't trouble if it's... As long as I'm close enough. I know I'm not exactly right. And something very similar. I can't remember which inscription's which, but they're two very similar. But basically, when's this nightmare going to end? This night of living death is the key. Night of oppression. In the West Bank, when somebody gets shot, the Israelis always say it's because he had a weapon, and then they discovered that he didn't have a weapon, so they say that they thought he had a weapon, he had a banana or something, whatever. And this girl is just making the point that these children plainly don't have a weapon. Phosphorus bomb, blood. Very sweet girl painted this, but she never smiled once. Most of the kids do smile. But to me, the weapon that they haven't got is more than just the gun. They don't have any weapons. If you and I have a problem with somebody burglaring our house, we have a police force to deal with it. Well, maybe we do. If we have a problem with a neighbour who's got a fence, a hedge too high, or is intimidating us, we have the civil courts to turn to. We have friends, we have relatives, we can get money, we have access to a banking system, we can work, we have lawyers. You know, we believe in our government. However much we complain about it, we have levers that we can turn. These people have absolutely none of this at all. It's really unimaginable to most of us. So when we know they're being bombed, but we don't think it through, they are not in a prison, in my opinion, but a zoo. They're fed enough like an animal to keep them alive. If they put their paws through the bars and try and scratch somebody, they get shot. And otherwise, they're just left to their own devices and given nothing. They have no weapons of any kind. They can protest. So this is a bit of a protesting picture. In her interview, this girl said very sweetly, "This is our separating wall. We cannot travel with it. This is Gaza. Every Gazan were bleeding. These are the bombs that they throw at us. That's all." Very elegant picture, I think. They've all got gags on in this composite picture. I'm not quite sure what this means. Is this a Western demonstration where we're not allowed to say enough? Or is it a demonstration, say, in the West Bank, or even in Gaza itself? But there's a sense in which they're trying to say to us, you're not listening to us, or nobody's speaking for us. We're not being allowed to tell our story. And above all, I have to say that's what I want this exhibition to be. I don't know whether you really want the whole of this poem. I think it's better in Arabic. I don't know whether you had a chance to look at it than it probably is in English. But, O Gaza, a mother whose soul is barren, in the desert trees will be grown from the tears shed for Gaza. It's quite imageful, isn't it? No, I swear. Does this sound like somebody saying yes to the blockade? No, 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 I swear no. So, to be means to exist. To exist means to have an identity, a self-belief, a self-pride. Otherwise, you're just a slave, an empty vessel, aren't you? To be or not to be. It's not about physical existence necessarily. Here's a good picture, I think, a sophisticated picture. No, no to the blockade. The fist of resistance, despite the barbed wire, is steering the ship the way it wants to go on the ocean. This is a dream, with Al-Aqsa Mosque safely in the heart, the Palestinian flag, and the dove of peace flying overhead with the olive branch. But see, the dove of peace now in Palestinian colours. They're offering Palestine that. To be or not to be, that is the question. Notice this is Samud again. Despite the fact that everybody's dead and the country's gone to hell, it's still my land, in the end my home to me, and I'm not leaving. Although taking up arms doesn't have to involve weapons. In schools, they understand people's desire to die, both because they want to go to heaven and join their family members who are already dead, and because they're just in such despair. And of course, some of those people, a few of those people, will take that a step further and want to punish the enemy for it. And I don't see any unreasonableness in that. This picture shows somebody crying tears of blood over the wreckage, and of course the eye can't cry forever without turning into an image of hatred, I think that is. An image of resistance. But the real point of this picture is the city of life, and this is the schools understand this negative thrust, and they try as a conscious program to bring culture, theatre, art, and historical culture into the curriculum to give the children a sense of strong self-belief and identity, to try and boost this negative, get rid of this negative, turn that energy into something positive and a sense of pride. And they call it simply life, or manufacturing life. And it is part of their school curriculum now. That's the Gaza government school curriculum. The UN, I think, do something a bit more low-key, but in the same vein. So Gaza, the city of life, has that specific meaning. Okay, we are getting onto the last lap, and so I'm going to skip. This is about Rachel Corrie and her parents in Tel Aviv, Scindian, suing. Is it the government they're suing? And as a result of that, a suspension of the sale of bulldozers, the D9 bulldozers we were looking at before, has happened. They now don't supply, Caterpillar don't supply them. This organisation, which is Jewish Voice for Peace, American organisation, they say have been asking this for over 7 years, but political pressure didn't achieve it. But suing the Israeli government for Rachel Corrie's death stopped Caterpillar exporting bulldozers. An important point in the fight for Palestinian children's voice is why we don't know this. Why have I had to get this obscure document that's only been reported in America and in the Haaretz? Why have we never heard of this? You know that everyday, ordinary, everyday stuff matters. We have to know all this stuff. We have to give these people a voice. They're trying to give it to themselves. This is a terrific guy. He's got about 200 kids. I'm afraid most of them are girls, because the boys think it's all a bit sissy, this stuff. That's me. This is the British Vice Consul, the consul in Gaza. This is the guy who runs the British Council. These are 4 children, 2 Samunis. This is Amira, who's quite famous for spending 3 days with a shattered leg crawling about the streets of Tal al-Hawa when that battle was going on, because her parents were killed. Nobody could help her. And another girl whose parents were killed. So 4 mass murder victims here in this small group. They get taught how to objectivise the situation they're in and that they see other people in, how to make a story about it, how to try and communicate it. The point is to give them a voice, to make them realistic and objective about their own problems, and to give them a voice to the outside world. I think this is really important. And now we're into the last couple of boards, cartoons. Here's all the images again. It's self-explanatory, isn't it? These older kids are laughing at themselves. It's a good way of dealing with your problems. What does that say? Reconstructing Gaza Israeli style or something like that? Something like that. Yeah, it's not exactly that, but here's Gaza all... the bird is saying, how is to Gaza today? And it's implied that the snake is saying it's fine. See, not talking to Gaza, talking to Israel. I mentioned the closure down here. They feel that very strongly. They feel that very strongly. This is a clever picture. It's like a postage stamp. It's a receipt for having paid 150 shekels for the right to demonstrate. Can't demonstrate without an authorised stamp-paid permission. This is a demonstration in 2008 for International Children's Day in the West Bank, in support of Gaza, but from the West Bank. Okay, I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a couple of minutes over this picture, and then we're all done. This picture, I think, the most important, but you really need, I think, all this long and tedious build-up that I've given you about it. The children of Gaza are asking for help. So I talked to Alad, one of these two girls who painted it. I don't know how old they are, 15, 16, something like that. And I said, if they're asking for help, why aren't they looking at the people, us in the audience, that they want help from? And she said, then this isn't the children of Gaza asking for help, silly. Look, Gaza is this way. This is the gateway to Gaza, where they've hung their SOS. This is Arabic for Gaza. The children are in these burning buildings asking for help. This is the world. This is the world watching us, and she wrote, the world is watching. And I said, okay, so when we say that the world is watching, we mean the world is going to come to your assistance. If Israel doesn't stop it, the world's watching them. You know, we'd say that to a child. I'm watching you. Don't do that anymore. She said, absolutely not. We've been here for 3 weeks being bombed and killed, and all you do is watch us. You don't do anything, and you never will. And she wrote, the world is only watching. She wasn't having goes at me personally, but she was very upset about it. These are Arabs, Russians, Israelis, Chinese, British, whatever you like, Americans. And I realised where this image came from. If you remember, when the news organisations were reporting on the Gaza war, they did it from outside the fence because they weren't allowed to go in. And they did it from a little rise, actually quite close to Sderot, at a kibbutz nearby. And from this gentle rise, they filmed into Gaza City and into Jabalia camp. And they filmed those phosphorus bombs, and they filmed those explosions. But now I want you, in another thought experiment, to switch your point of view. You've seen those tall flats in other pictures, so I want you to imagine you're one of those kids in one of those tall flats, seeing your neighbours going up in flames, knowing or not knowing whether you're going to be next, seeing all the lights in this hill just about a mile or maybe 2 miles away. Gaza's only 4 miles wide at its narrowest point, about 6 miles wide where Gaza City is. So 3 miles from you gets you into the centre of Gaza, right in the centre. So you're a child, you're looking out of your windows, you can see rows and rows, banks of TV crews, lights flashing, blinking lights, lots of people drinking beer, talking, the Israeli armed services handing out leaflets. You probably can't see the detail, but you'll see all the movement in the daytime. At night you'll see all the lights. Maybe 1,000 people on that hill, hundreds of TV cameras pointing at you. And you surely, if you're a child, think, surely to God somebody's going to come and help me. And of course nobody ever did. And I think this is a message that we need. We need people to see from inside Gaza to outside Gaza. We don't need people to go to Gaza and look at it. We need to get in the head of it and look out from it. And I hope this picture helps us to do that. The very last couple of pictures are from little kids. And they really wanted to send these pictures. This school painted the van, of course you've never seen this. I could show you lots of pictures of very good drawings on it, but Gaza to England. One of the things I point out is the number of girls who aren't wearing headscarves, by the way. They're all in their Sunday best, by the way. They knew I was coming. And they painted the van with relish. They were really anxious for it to go. And this is the very last picture. This is a 7-year-old child. We love Palestine. We hope be freedom, and with best wishes from the children to Britain. So I'm sorry it took so long, but I always warn people in advance it will. There you go.